winter of 1913, Carl Jung sat alone at his desk in Kusnacht, his family house by the lake near Zurich, opened a blank journal, and did something no trained psychiatrist before him had ever formally attempted. He started talking to his own unconscious, not as a metaphor, not as a theoretical exercise. He actually spoke to it, gave it names, let it speak back, drew what it showed him. What emerged over the next 3 years became the most important document of his life, a manuscript he called the Liber Novus, the Red Book. What Jung discovered during those years wasn't just a theory. It was a method, a specific way of entering the unconscious, not passively, not accidentally, but deliberately, on purpose, in a window of time he described as surprisingly short. He called it active imagination. Here's the thing most people don't know about Jung and the unconscious. He wasn't interested in explaining it. He was interested in accessing it. And he'd already spent years proving with hard clinical data that the unconscious could be reached faster than anyone believed. Before the Red Book, before active imagination, before any of that. Jung ran an experiment in his clinic that changed psychiatry. He called it the word association test. The method was simple. A list of 100 words. He read them one at a time to a subject, who was supposed to say the first word that came to mind, fast, without thinking. What Jung was measuring wasn't the answers. He was measuring the hesitations. He found something remarkable. When a stimulus word touched something buried in the unconscious, something emotionally charged, something unresolved, the subject's response time increased by at least 0.4 seconds, a fraction of a breath, sometimes longer. The skin conductance changed, the breathing shifted. The unconscious had responded before the conscious mind could hide it. What this told Jung was something that completely reoriented how he thought about depth psychology. The unconscious isn't behind a locked door. It isn't hiding. It's actually right there, incredibly close. And it communicates constantly. The problem isn't access. The problem is that most people never slow down enough to listen. This is where the 4 minutes come in. There's a state your brain enters briefly, at the boundary between waking and sleep. Neuroscientists now call it the hypnagogic state. Your brain waves shift from beta, normal waking consciousness, to alpha and theta. The analytical, defending, filtering mind quiets, and something opens. In that state, the unconscious becomes unusually accessible. Research published through the NIH has documented that in the theta range, 4 to 8 hertz, the brain is in a mode of heightened receptivity to internal content. Images appear, associations loosen, things surface that the waking mind would normally suppress. Here's what's important. You don't need to be falling asleep to enter that state. You can learn to enter it deliberately. Jung figured this out in 1913. Without the brainwave equipment, without the neuroimaging, he just noticed. He documented it in his journals, that there were specific moments of day when the images came more easily, when the unconscious spoke more clearly, and that the transition into that state, if you stayed with it, took roughly 4 minutes of sustained, directed attention. Not 4 hours, 4 minutes. The technique he developed has 4 basic movements. The first is simply this. You stop. Not meditation in the traditional sense, though it can look like it from the outside. You stop doing. You close your eyes, or let them go soft. You let the noise of the day settle. You're not thinking about anything. You're waiting. Most people never make it past this step. The moment they stop, the mind floods with tasks, with anxieties, with the list of things still undone. That flood is not a sign that it isn't working. That flood is actually the surface layer of the unconscious. You're already in contact. You just have to wait for it to settle. The second movement is finding the image. Don't force it. Don't construct it. Just notice what appears. Maybe it's a fragment of a dream from last night, a face, a feeling with a color, a scene that makes no immediate sense. Jung wrote in the Red Book, "Let whatever wants to come, come." Something always comes. The third movement is what makes active imagination different from every other meditative or therapeutic practice. You engage. You don't just observe the image, you speak to it. You ask it what it wants. You let it answer. This sounds strange. I know it sounds strange. But what you're doing is giving the unconscious a form through which to communicate. Jung called this conferring the gift of form. The unconscious thinks in images, not in words. When you give it a stage, it performs. This is why Jung spent 3 years filling the Red Book with what you could only call conversations. He was in dialogue with figures that emerged from his own unconscious. The old wise man, the young child, a figure he named Philemon, who felt so separate from Jung himself that Jung once wrote, "Philemon was a force, a reality I could not simply wish away." He was not hallucinating, he was listening. The fourth movement is the most overlooked. You write it down, whatever happened. Whatever the image said, whatever shifted, whatever surprised you, you record it. This step matters more than most people realize. Writing it down is how unconscious content passes into consciousness. It makes the contact real. It creates what Jung called the transcendent function, the bridge between the two layers of the psyche. I tried this for the first time about 2 years after I left hospice work. I'd been in therapy. I'd done the talking. I understood my patterns intellectually, but there was something that hadn't moved, something I knew was there, just underneath, that I couldn't quite reach through words. My therapist at the time, she was Jungian trained, which is a specific kind of training, where he said, "Stop trying to think your way there. Try to listen your way there." The first time I sat down and actually followed the 4 movements, what appeared surprised me. Not something dramatic, just a very specific room, one I didn't recognize. A door I hadn't thought about in years, and I mean that as literally as I can say it. I sat with what appeared in that room for maybe 10 minutes. I wrote 3 pages afterward. I can't tell you that what I found made everything clear or resolved my entire past. That's not how it works. What I can tell you is that something that had been stuck for 2 years moved, gently, the way something that's been frozen sometimes thaws. Not all at once, just enough to shift. Jung would say I hadn't done something to my unconscious. I'd done something with it. That's the whole distinction. What Jung believed, and what 4 minutes proves, is that the unconscious isn't the obstacle. It isn't the dark force working against you. It's the part of you that has been carrying the weight of everything you couldn't process consciously. It's been waiting. Not patiently, exactly. If you felt it in your dreams, in your body, in the quiet moments when a thought rises that you quickly push back down, it hasn't been quiet. It's been knocking. Active imagination isn't about loading yourself with better content, the way you'd update a piece of software. It's about having a conversation that's long overdue. You probably already know what I'm about to say. The window is open right now. The door, the one you know exists, doesn't require a key. It requires 4 minutes, a quiet room, and the willingness to stop long enough to let whatever wants to come, come. Jung spent 3 years in that conversation. He didn't come out the other side with answers. He came out the other side knowing how to ask better questions. That might be all it takes to start.